How you guys doing this morning? You're great. Awesome. Wow. Okay. All right. Great. My name's Taylor Johnson. I'm a stand-up comedian. I travel the country, and I do stand-up, and I'm really glad to be here. This has been a really great weekend. I just had a lot of fun. I want to thank Pastor Eric for having me Friday night with the volunteers dinner, and then today this is... I was on staff at a church for a period of time, and so I kind of understand how big of a deal it is to give someone else a Sunday morning, because you only have 52 in a year, and then you have like a few that people might not be there for. And so, I don't know, there aren't that many opportunities that you have to speak to your church, and that you hand one over to me. I feel the responsibility, and so I really want to do a good job. The best way for me to introduce myself, if you don't know me, I'm kind of an awkward person. I'm just kind of awkward in social situations. Anybody else, you would say in social situations you're a little awkward? No? Nobody? Great. Awesome. Great. I feel right at home. I'm like an awkward person. I do things without thinking. Have you ever tickled someone and then realized you weren't good enough friends with them to have done that? You're like, ha ha ha, we're having a good time. Gotcha. Oh no. I'm sorry I tickled you. That's a weird apology to make to someone. I'm sorry, ma'am, in line at Walmart. I thought we were having a good time. No, don't call the cops. I'll leave. That's me. I'm like awkward most places, and for the longest time, I'd get really embarrassed by how awkward I was, and so I would want to run away from any situation that could be awkward because I didn't want to get embarrassed, and it would just be bad. And so I ran away from any awkward situation. And one situation that could be awkward for people is being open and honest about what's going on in your life and like talking about what's going on in your life. And I especially ran away from those awkward moments because from junior high into high school and even into college, I dealt with depression and suicide. And I know it's kind of a weird way for a comedian to start, but it's true. I dealt with those things. I didn't want to tell anybody about it. I didn't want to talk about it because I thought, like, nobody's going to understand. Nobody's going to get it. They're just kind of going to judge me. They're going to look at me weird from then on. And nobody can relate to it. So it'd be best if I just, like, keep it to myself, push those feelings out, and never bring it up. And that was, like, the worst thing that I could do. And it was killing me on the inside until eventually, when I was in college, I met somebody else, and they told me their story, and they had gone through the same thing as me that I was going through. And they like fought through the awkwardness for me to tell me that I wasn't alone, and they shared their story, and it was such a relief, and it like changed my life. And so now, that's kind of why I do stand-up, and that's why I love to travel, and I tell stories. And I think I was here like 2 years ago with you guys. I don't know if you guys remember. It was at Christmas time, which is my favorite time of year. Christmas is the best. I love Christmas. I usually ask people, does anyone think there's a better holiday than Christmas? And people are like, my birthday. And I'm like, you're selfish. I love Christmas, love everything about it. Traditions, the gifts, time with your family, the movies you get to watch, the songs, some of the songs I don't like very much. 12 Days of Christmas, it's the worst, dumbest, terrible song. It's a bad song. 12 Days of Christmas is the one, on the first day of Christmas, my true love gave, and then it's a list of gifts given to you by your true love, but they're the worst gifts. If my true love were to give me these things, I would break up immediately. It's just a bunch of birds. It's just every day is more birds. I don't need one bird. I don't need 30 birds. I don't understand these gifts. Partridge in a pear tree, that's fine, that makes sense. 3 French hens, it's racist. Why has it got to be French? What's so special? Oh, hello, I'm a French hen. What's so special? Also, why is that the noise we make for French people? Why do we think all French people go, ha, 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 ha? Nobody does. We think all French, you go up to an old lady in France and you're like, hi, grandma, and she's like, ha, ha. That's not going to happen. 6 geese a lane, that's birds giving more birth to more birds. It's a mess. Why I don't want that. 7 swans is swimming. That's actually kind of majestic and beautiful, but where are they swimming? I don't have a pool. They're just like in my toilet. I don't need that. And then there are some that aren't birds. 9 ladies dancing, it's inappropriate. 10 lords a leaping. That one doesn't make any, why? 10, you just open the door and 10 dudes are just like, hey, how's it going? Why you got so many birds? I don't understand. But there has to be a story behind this. There has to be a reason. There has to be like some story from long ago, there is a reason why these are the gifts, and I have no idea what it is, and I feel like I can't fully appreciate or understand that song at all because I do not know the story behind it. And that's how I feel like it is with most things. You can't fully appreciate or understand something until you know the story behind it, and I feel like everything has a story. And it's so funny to me, like with me, when people see me out in the real world and I'm wearing like a plain white t-shirt and they don't know the story about me and my feelings toward plain white t-shirts, they just think, oh, that's just a normal guy. But the friends who know, like, I don't like plain white. Oh, man, it makes me feel so weird to wear a plain white t-shirt because I put one on in the morning and it just looks invisible. It just looks transparent and you can just see my nipples. You just see my nipples. And I just stare in the mirror and I'm like, can you see them now? Yeah, you can still see them. Can you see them? Whoa, yeah, you can see all three of them now. And but if you don't know the story, you can't fully appreciate how awkward I feel wearing that plain white t-shirt. But when you know the story, you can. And I feel the same way, like, okay, there's some things that I enjoy that I know a lot of people don't enjoy. I love wrestling, okay? I love wrestling. I think wrestling is great. When I tell people I like wrestling, they go, you know it's fake, right? And I'm like, yeah, shut up, yeah. So is Scandal, so is Game of Thrones, so all the shows you watch, you still watch it, it's fake. I'm spitting so much. I love wrestling, and I feel like I can get people to enjoy wrestling, specifically one match, if I tell them the story behind it. If you know the story behind the match, I feel like you can finally appreciate and enjoy it, and so I'm going to try that real quick. I'm going to tell you the story behind this match, and we're going to watch some clips of it, and then you will find yourself enjoying wrestling. You will find yourself being entertained by wrestling. You'll be so freaked out you didn't know it would be possible. So, do you guys know who the guy on the left is? That's Hulk Hogan. You guys know the guy on the right? What? Shawn Michaels. His name's Shawn. Usually when I do it, there's like one person who's like, Shawn Michaels? I'm like, yes, one of me, you, a secret fan. So these two guys have never wrestled before. Hulk Hogan used to be the big deal, but he retires. He kind of goes away. Shawn Michaels then becomes the really big deal. And Shawn Michaels used to be really good at being the bad guy. They would have him come out, be the bad guy of the match, the guy that everyone boos, come out on mic, talk smack, make the audience hate him. He used to be so good at that. But then Shawn Michaels becomes a Christian, and he doesn't really want to play that part anymore. But Hulk Hogan comes out of retirement, and he comes back to the WWE, and he's like, hey, I want to wrestle Shawn Michaels because I want to look like a big deal again. And I know that Shawn Michaels is the big deal right now. We've never wrestled. The audience will love it. They'll eat it up. They'll go crazy. I want to wrestle Shawn Michaels, and I want to win the match, and I want Shawn Michaels to play the villain. And Shawn Michaels is like, no, I don't really do that anymore. When I play the villain, I really go after the person. And so I don't feel like I should do that. And Hulk Hogan's like, no, that's the only way I'll do this. So they agree. Shawn Michaels will be the villain. Hulk Hogan will be the hero. They will do 3 matches over 3 months. Hulk Hogan will win the first one. Shawn Michaels will win the next 2. And that way, Hulk Hogan can kind of like, he gets like the initial glory, and then he can like go away and go back into retirement. And Shawn Michaels can continue being the good guy. So that's the plan. And Hulk Hogan like says to Shawn Michaels, like, hey, when you go out there, like really let me have it. Like really just like go after me and make fun of me. And Shawn Michaels does, and then Hulk Hogan gets mad. Which I think is so funny to be like, hey, go make fun of me. Okay, your ears are weird. How dare you? Like, what? You told me to do this. So Hulk Hogan gets so mad that right before their first match, he tells everybody, hey, remember how we said we were going to do 3 matches? Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to do this one, and then I'm going to leave. And there's nothing you can do about it. And Shawn Michaels is so mad, and literally there was nothing he can do about it. So the only thing that he can do is when they go out for the match, he acts like a complete idiot on purpose to make Hulk Hogan look bad. So like because wrestling is fake, when someone punches you, you have to sell it. You have to like, you can't just like not react. Oh, that would look fake, it would look bad. So you have to, oh man, you have to react. But what Shawn Michaels does is on the other side, where every punch is, ow, ow, ow. And he does that the entire match. And he doesn't tell Hulk Hogan that he's going to do it because this is his payback to him. This is how he's going to get him back. And the look on Hulk Hogan's face when he realizes what's happening is the funniest thing in the world to me. Can you play that? So play the clip. See that? You're laughing? You just enjoyed wrestling. Congratulations. And the only reason you did is because you knew the story behind it. And when you know the story behind something, you can finally appreciate and understand it. Like there are moments in the Bible that I think are so funny and so great. And knowing the story behind it makes it even better. Like Mark 14, my favorite parts of the Bible are like the weird parts where you're like reading it and you're like, why, what? Why is that in there? Mark 14 is the story of Jesus getting arrested in the garden. And it's talking about how the guards are there, and the disciples try to fight back a little bit. But Jesus is like, no, I'm supposed to be arrested. Let me be taken away. And it says that like Jesus was arrested and taken away, and the disciples ran off. And then there was one guy wearing linen cloth, so basically like wearing bed sheets. And he tried to follow after Jesus, and the guards see him and try to catch him, but he ran away, and they could only grab his linen cloth, and he ran into the forest naked. And it's like 2 sentences. It's just like 2, and they move on immediately. There's no explanation. No, it's just, and yea, our Lord and Savior was arrested, and all of the disciples feared. Oh, there was a naked guy? He was just like totally naked in the forest. Anyways, Jesus was, and it's like, why? Why is that in there? So Mark wrote the book, but Mark is not one of Jesus' 12 disciples. He was not there for all of these events to happen. So because this is an eyewitness account, his book is. And so people believe that Mark is writing down Peter's account of what happens. And so Mark is sitting down with Peter and like, hey, tell me everything that happened, tell me all about it. And Mark writes the story down and gets it out to people. And people believe that Mark is the naked guy. And that's my favorite thing, because like either one of 2 things happen. Either Mark is writing it and he's like, shout out to me being naked. Or Mark is sitting down with Peter and it's just like, okay, tell me like what else do you remember? What else? And Peter's like, man, I don't know. We were all like really scared when Jesus got arrested. Oh yeah, and there was this naked guy? Wait, was that you? And Mark's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, dude, you gotta put that in there. And Mark's like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, put it in there, I'm not gonna do this. And he's like, okay, and then I was naked, and then we moved on. I just think that's so much funnier when you know the story behind it. And like, so as I've traveled, I've been doing these house shows. I've been going into people's living rooms and been doing comedy shows for 20 to 30 people. And what's great is I tell stories for half of the show, and the other half of the show, the audience tells stories. And it's been so much fun hearing these stories. And I've been traveling, and this is kind of the shirt for the tour that I've been doing. And actually, I've got stuff back there on that merch table that I'm going to tell you about really quick, and then I'm going to move on. So on that merch table, I have a sign-up sheet for an email newsletter that I send out every week on Tuesday, and you can sign up for that, and you get like jokes and videos and updates and stuff. And then I have a stand-up album of a bunch of material that you have never, ever heard from me, and so you might enjoy that. But the most important stuff is that I have T-shirts, journals, and stickers that all have this symbol on it. And the symbol, I don't know, it's really important to me. I want to tell you the story behind it. So this is a hobo symbol. So during the 1800s up until the 1930s, there were a large population of hobos. And hobos are different from homeless people. Homeless people are people who fell on hard times and forced to live on the street. But hobos are people who chose that lifestyle. And they go, like, leave their life behind and go ride the rails and, like, jump on a train or go from town to town. And the hobos, they had a national convention every year in the 1800s. In St. Louis, Missouri, where all the hobos would come together for a convention, like Comic-Con, except for hobos. And at one of their conventions, they came up with a code of honor amongst themselves. One of the things in their code of honor is that all hobos will look out for each other. And one of the ways that they would do this is they would carry a piece of chalk with them wherever they went. So as you would be passing through a town as a hobo, you would just like leave a little drawing out in the open that was a symbol that other hobos knew the meaning of. So if you're a hobo and you're passing through town, you'd see these symbols and it would warn you of what to expect in that town. So one symbol might mean like, hey, the judge here is a jerk, look out. Or, hey, it's safe to camp here. And like some are really practical and specific, like, hey, you can totally sleep in this barn. The people who own it are totally cool with it. But others were more vague and almost like broad and philosophical, like be prepared to defend yourself, or everything's okay, everything's all right. The sky's the limit. And this symbol means tell a good story. And I love this because I love the idea that hobos understood the power of a good story. Because like hobos, they were outcasts. and they were looked down upon in society. But they understood the quickest way to connect to a community was by telling a good story. Because like I said at the beginning, I dealt with depression and suicide for the longest time, and the thing that saved me and the thing that changed me was someone else telling me their story. And that's what let me know that I wasn't alone, and that's what changed everything for me, was just someone telling me their story. Pixar, the company who makes like Toy Story and Monsters, Inc., they have rules for storytelling that they always follow. And you can find them online, and they're all really interesting. But one of the rules for storytelling is that every great story follows the same structure. And the structure is, once upon a time, there was a blank. Every day they blank. But one day, blank. And everything changed. My story is, once upon a time, there was a guy, he was depressed. And every day he dealt with these emotions and feelings he didn't know how to handle, and he kept it to himself every single day, and it was killing him on the inside. Until one day, Jesus. And everything changed. And what I love is that this structure is in so many different places in the Bible, where we have a character, and every day they do one thing, but one day Jesus shows up, and everything changes. And I love, one specific story I love so much is the story of the woman at the well in John chapter 4. This is one of my favorite stories ever. So Jesus is traveling with his disciples, and he's traveling with his disciples, and they come to a town, and all the disciples are hungry for lunch, so they all go and get lunch. And Jesus is like, I'm going to hang back here. I'm just going to hang out at this well. So the disciples go off, and this woman shows up at the well. And the woman is a Samaritan woman. And it's like noon. It's like noontime when she shows up. And Jesus talks to her. And that might not be weird unless you know the story behind this. Because Jesus is a Jew and this woman is a Samaritan, and Jews don't like Samaritans. Jews would love nothing more than to avoid Samaritans at all costs. It says in the Bible that most Jews, when they would when they would be traveling and they would have to pass through a Samaritan town, most of the time they would rather walk out of their way and walk around it so they could avoid talking to Samaritans. So it's weird that Jesus would talk to her because he's a Jew, and why would he do that? And the other weird thing is that this is around noontime at the well, and nobody really goes to the well at noon. That's the hottest time of the day, and this is like a lot of and people would avoid it. So everyone would go to the well in the early morning or late afternoon. Nobody really goes to the well around noon. So this woman goes there on purpose to avoid people, probably, to avoid the crowd. And we find out a little bit more why. But this woman is an outcast for two different reasons. She's an outcast to Jesus as a Jew, to a Samaritan, and she's pretty much an outcast to her community because she wants to go and be alone. She wants to avoid talking to anybody and being around the crowds. And yet Jesus still says to her, hey, could you give me a drink of water? And she's like, why are you talking to me? Why are you talking to me? Also, I don't know, why are you starting a conversation with me? And he says to her, if you knew the water that I had for you, you would be asking me for a drink of water, because the water that I have will satisfy you so much that you will never need to go back for another drink. And then the woman says in John chapter 4, the woman said to him, sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water. And Jesus said to her, go call your husband and come here. The woman answered, I have no husband. And Jesus said to her, you are right in saying I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true. It's like a weird, it almost feels like a non sequitur. It feels like, why would you bring that up? Because he's like, oh, I got water for you. And she's like, I like that water. And he says, you're not married. I don't know, it seems like a strange, why would you bring that up next? But first, I love, there are so many moments where Jesus is using beautiful metaphor, and he's I don't know, he's so much smarter than us, and obviously, and he does this metaphor, and nobody understands it's a metaphor. They think he's being for real. He's like, oh, I've got water for you. And she's like, oh, I want one. It's like, no, it's not real water. What he's talking about is a relationship with him. What I have for you will satisfy you more than anything. The relationship with me will satisfy you more than anything that you could possibly have. And she wants it. And so what he does is he points out to her the area in her life that she has been trying to find that satisfaction. Another way of putting it is this woman is trying to make her story. Once upon a time, there was a Samaritan woman, and every day she was miserable, and she just had a normal life until one day she got a husband, and everything changed. And that's what she tried to make her third blank, the blank where everything changes, and it doesn't work. Because then she has to go back, and she's been married 5 times. So I guess, and I got married, and everything changed. And it didn't change, and nothing changed. So she had to go back to the well and get another drink. Maybe it's not this husband, it's the next husband. I got married again, and this time. No, not that time. It didn't work again. So she goes back again and again and again. And he's saying to her, if you have what I am offering you, you will never need to go back for another drink. What I have will satisfy you so much, it's all you need. If you put me into your third blank, and you say that Jesus shows up and everything changes, then you will never need another story in your life. It will change everything, and it will stick, and your life will be changed forever. And I feel like that's so true for a lot of us, is that like we have the story, and there's so many things we try to fit into that last part of the story. And I finally got that job, and everything changed. And I'm finally like living on my own, and everything changed. And I finally, I don't know, my parents are finally proud of me, and everything changed. I'm in that relationship, and everything changed, and nothing fits into that third blank where everything changes except for Jesus. The only complete story is one where Jesus shows up and changes everything. And that's what she gets. Finally, she is blown away that he knows all this about her. And she runs back to the town, and she tells everybody about Jesus, which is extraordinary because a little while ago, she was avoiding everybody. A little while ago, she wanted to go to the well by herself and didn't want to be around anybody, but now that her story is complete and she has Jesus in it, she is more than willing to be around everyone. She's more than willing to be in the center of attention and talking to everybody. And this is the next part of the story. So everybody goes, and after they hear her talk about Jesus, they want to go meet Jesus. And they get Jesus to stay with them for a while. And it says, many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. She said, he told me all that I ever did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with them. And he stayed with them for 2 days. And many more believed because of his word. And they said to the woman, it is no longer because of what you said that we believe. For we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this is indeed the Savior of the world. And I feel like that last quote is a big deal. It is no longer because of. So if it's no longer, that means at one point it was. At one point it was because of this woman's story. It was because this woman told her story that those people were interested enough in Jesus to want to go meet him. And then they got to the point where it's no longer because of your story. It's no longer because you shared your story that we believe, but now we've met him for ourselves. You might be in here this morning, and you don't have a finished story. And it could be like the story of your life. It could be one specific area of your life. It could be relationships. It could be finances. It could be, I don't know, your emotions and your feelings. It could be anything going on. It could be doubts. It could be anything going on in your life. And you've been searching for something that shows up and changes everything. And you've been putting different stuff in there in hopes that if this happens and everything changes. And this morning, I just want to say the only thing that changed my life, the only thing that literally, I wouldn't be alive. I would legitimately not be alive if I didn't put Jesus in my story. Because that's the only thing that changes everything. Or maybe you're in here and you have a complete story. You have a part of the story where Jesus shows up and changes everything. The greatest thing that you could do is tell that story to someone. When we become a Christian, we start going to church and we start being involved. We hear a lot about being obedient. We hear a lot about like ministry and doing something for God. And it can be kind of daunting. It can be kind of like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? I don't know. The easiest thing you can do is just tell someone your story. You might think like, well, who would want to, I don't know, who would relate to what I went through? And I felt that same way. Like when I was first on the other side of it, I thought, I don't know anybody who's dealing with what I dealt with. I remembered how good I was at hiding it when I went through it. And if I was so good at hiding it, how much better must everyone else be at hiding the same thing? You can't fully appreciate or understand someone. You can't fully appreciate or understand someone until you know the story behind them. And when people find out that you're a Christian and that you go to church on Sunday mornings, you're involved at a church, I feel like they can't fully appreciate or understand until they know the story behind why. Because they could think like, oh, they grow up that way. Oh, they just feel like they're supposed to do that, so they do it. But you have a story. I mean, I think knowing the story behind something is so important, and I want to prove that. This is my last point I want to make. So I'm going to show you a video, and I'm not going to tell you the story behind it first. I'm going to show it to you without context, and then I'll come back and explain. It's weird, okay? I'm just going to admit, this weird video, it's weird. So can you go ahead and show that first part, the first video? So it's kind of weird. It's a weird musical performance. It's kind of weird. Why is he acting that way? What is going on? If you watch it without knowing it, it's like easy to kind of laugh and kind of like, what is this guy doing? So that's a band called the Tragically Hip. They're one of the biggest bands in all of Canada. They've been one of the biggest bands for like over 30 years. They're a huge deal. And that is the lead singer of the band. And last year he was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. So they decided to do one last concert that he would get to perform in. And it was a huge, thousands of people showed up to this concert. They showed it on TV. They canceled all programming in Canada, basically, to show that the Prime Minister of Canada came to this concert. It was a really big deal. And that's from the last song from his last concert. And he knows that when he walks off that stage, he will never get to sing again. He'll never get to be with his band in this way. He'll never get to perform again. And if you watch it without context, it's like kind of silly and it's easy to dismiss of just like another weird performer. But when you know the story behind it, it changes the way you react to it. Because you see how sad, it's heartbreaking. His anger, his sadness. It changes the way, here, watch the second part. Watch it a little bit more. Everyone has a story. You have a story. And if it's incomplete, the only thing that fits in there is Jesus. And if your story is complete and Jesus has changed everything, there are people who need to hear it. But also, on the other side of that, everyone who doesn't know Jesus also has a story. And you can't fully appreciate or understand them unless you know the story behind it. there is a story behind why that woman was at the well by herself. Probably ashamed, probably embarrassed, probably made an outcast because of the number of husbands that she had had. And there was a reason why she had so many husbands. It's because she was looking for something to fill that only Jesus could. I don't know, especially like nowadays with social media and with everything, it's so easy to dismiss or make fun of someone, and you got to know the story behind them. There's a story behind they get mad about what makes them mad. There's a story behind the clothes they wear or the way they act or the reasons why they get angry about the things they get angry about. There's a reason why they have the political views that they have. There's a reason why. And it's so easy to just like dismiss, to turn, I don't know, to make fun of, to make we have no idea what their story is. What's funny, my dad has Alzheimer's. He's had Alzheimer's for several years. And it's gotten like a little bit worse over time. He's gotten more quiet as time has gone on. Because I think when he's afraid to start talking about something because he might not be able to finish the conversation. He might not be able to finish the story or whatever. And so like when we're in the house, he'll do it. But when we're out in public, he stays really quiet. And one time at Christmas, all the family was together. And my brother just thought he was like mad. Just thought like my dad was just sitting there like so angry. Because he just sat there quiet. And my dad, I don't know, just in my brother's mind, he just thought like, why is my dad being like so, I don't know, mad right now? Why is he angry at us? What did we do? And he's preoccupied with that. He didn't know the story that really, he just didn't want to talk because of the Alzheimer's. It could be big things, it could be little things, but people in your family, people who are your friends, people that you know, people at work, they might have a reason why they don't like church. They might have a story that you could listen to, that you could have sympathy for, that you could speak to and say, oh, my church, we're not like that. Or, hey, I totally understand. I absolutely understand, and I'm sorry that happened. Man, I really wish that wouldn't have happened. I don't know. Everyone has a story. Would you guys all stand? And with the band, would you guys come up? Like I said, you could be in here, you have an incomplete story. You've been trying to fit other things in there for everything to change. You could have a complete story, and you need to be ready to tell your story. Because there could be someone who needs to hear that, like I needed to hear a story. Or you could be in here, and you would say that you want to be more sensitive to the stories of people around you. You would say, God knows all of the stories of all of the people in Lufkin. And you would say, God, please, open my eyes to the stories of the people around me that I could speak to them, so that I could be more understanding, so that I could show love and I could show grace to people who might, show me hate. But there's a story behind why they're showing me hate, because I'm a Christian. And God, I want to know their story. I want to feel for them. I want to change the way that I react to them, because I want to know their story. And I don't know where you're at right now. But for the next few minutes, as the band plays a song, I just want you to have a conversation with God about whatever that is. You could say anything to God. You could say anything. You could say, God, I'm mad at you. You could say, God, I don't even know if you're really there. You say, God, it's been so long since I've talked to you. I'm embarrassed. I always thought this was just for kids. I feel stupid doing that. I don't know. You could say anything to God. He already knows that you feel that way. He knows your thoughts. So why not just express them? Say, God, I want you to be a part of my story. I'm so sorry for all the other things I've been trying to put in. You could say, God, give me the courage, give me the wisdom to know who needs to hear my story. Help me to know how to do it. You could say, God, there's this guy at work who drives me crazy. I hate him. I never want to be around him. Help me, open my eyes. Make something happen to where I know his story, so that I could look at him with the same way that you look at him, which is love. Because nobody really knew the story of why that woman was at the well by herself, but Jesus knew. And when she goes to the town and she says, the thing that she's so amazed by is, he told me everything that I had ever done. But that shouldn't be the end of the thought, because the really miraculous part is, he told me everything that I had ever done, and yet he still wanted to talk to me. And yet he still looked at me with love. He knew everything that I had done, and yet he still gave me the time of day. That's what's incredible about Jesus. And he did that for you. And he calls all of us to do that for the people around us. So that's what, as they play a song, just talk to him. Just talk to him on your own. And if he says something in return, awesome. Write it down or do it right then and there. My goal as a Christian is to get to a point where the time between God tells me to do something and I actually do it shrinks to seconds. I want you to do this. And that's not the case for me. It takes me days. It takes me so long. I want you to pray for this person. I don't know. So I'm going to pray. When I say amen, just talk to him. God, thank you so much for your love and your grace and how awesome you are. Thank you that you know each and every one of our stories, and yet you still love us, and yet you still pour out grace and mercy, and yet you still give us joy and hope, and yet you still come and you want more than anything to be a part of our story, to change our story. God, I pray for every story in here that doesn't yet have you in it. God, I pray that today is the day. God, I pray for every story in here that does have you in it that hasn't been shared. Because the story might be too personal for them right now. And they may feel like they're not ready to share it yet. But God, I pray that you speak to them, that you tug on their heart, that you remind them that other people need to hear the story. God, I pray for every story represented in Lufkin that we don't know, that you know. God, open our hearts and open our eyes to see there is a reason why. There's a story behind every person. And help us to be sensitive to that. In your holy name I pray. Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's sermon at City Church. We are passionate about seeing people lead full lives in Christ. And we truly hope that you've been impacted today by God's Word. If there's anything that we can do for you, or you would like to share with us what God has spoken to you today through this message, please email us at info@citychurchlufkin.com. Or for more information about who we are, visit us online at citychurchlufkin.com.